Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen is in Eswatini to commemorate strong ties. But what's behind Taiwan's relationship with its only ally in Africa? Japan is releasing Fukushima wastewater into the ocean. Activists in Taiwan want it to stop.
Tech leaders from around the world are in Taipei to share their insights at the largest chips expo in history.
Plus, new running shoes help restore biodiversity in towns and cities. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen is on a state visit to Eswatini. This year marks both 55 years since the two countries formed diplomatic relations and 55 years since what was then Swaziland gained independence from the British. Ed Moon reports from Eswatini's capital, Mbabane.
A special welcome for a special occasion. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen is greeted by the King of Eswatini, Mswati III, on what is her second state visit to the southern African country. After 8 years in the post and with less than a year left in her final term, this could well be Tsai's last trip abroad as president. And she's hoping to use it to show Taiwan can be a reliable partner on a continent where Eswatini is now its only remaining diplomatic ally, in the face of pressure from China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan.
I enjoy the friendship that you offered to us, and I hope this friendship will continue and deepen.
While Tsai's time as head of state is coming to an end, King Mswati has no such concerns. Over his near 4-decade reign, he's already visited Taiwan 18 times. And while the rest of Africa has grown closer to China over the past several decades, attracted to lavish funding for infrastructure projects, the Eswatini royal family has been unmoved by Chinese overtures.
Taiwan is also my home, away from home.
With a population of just over 1 million people, Eswatini, once known as Swaziland, is a small country, especially by African standards. But as far as Taiwan's remaining allies go, it's one of the biggest. And it's in a region where Taipei is keen to maintain a foothold. Recent years have seen Taiwan build relations with the unrecognized nation of Somaliland in the Horn of Africa, although stopping short of official ties. Eswatini remains the country's main window into the continent.
Eswatini's relationship with Taipei has been far more durable than I think a lot of people ever expected. And then they've been among the most outspoken in favor and in defense of Taiwan of any country in the world, where the king has come out and said adamantly that he is not going to switch under any circumstances.
Despite the long journey, Tsai is scheduled to stay for just over 2 days, but she'll pack a lot into that time. It's 55 years of Eswatini independence and, of course, King Mswati III's 55th birthday. After that, Tsai Ing-wen is set to visit a civic project sponsored by National Taiwan University Hospital, an example of the kind of projects that Taiwan is funding and its few remaining allies. John Su, Ed Moon, in Mbabane, Eswatini, for TaiwanPlus.
Protesters have gathered in Taipei to demand an end to Japan's release of treated Fukushima wastewater in the Pacific Ocean. The release, which Tokyo began 2 weeks ago, has caused controversy throughout East Asia. Sally Jensen was at the protest.
A small group of environmentalists and anti-nuclear activists gather in Taipei to protest on an issue long at the forefront of their concerns: nuclear waste. But this time the issue transcends national borders. Activists here outside the Japan-Taiwan Exchange Association in Taipei are demanding the Japanese government end the release of treated nuclear wastewater from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. They say the release is unscientific and irresponsible and leaves coastal communities and consumers vulnerable to radioactive contamination.
那我们认为这是非常不公平的，因为等于日本把核灾的责任、核灾事故后续要清除的这些成本转嫁到全球的环境上，甚至让邻国的都要承受到这个成本。
Japan's government began the release of the mildly radioactive wastewater 2 weeks ago. It was used to cool the nuclear reactors of the plant, which suffered several meltdowns after it was hit by a tsunami in 2011. It's caused public outcry in Japan's neighbors Taiwan, South Korea, and China. Opposition is strongest in China, which has slapped a ban on imports of Japanese seafood. But the UN's nuclear watchdog has approved Tokyo's actions, and several senior officials have sought to ease people's worries by eating fish caught near the discharge point. Scientists also say that the levels of radioactivity in the treated wastewater are negligible and pose no real risk to human or environmental health.
The broad consensus is that risks to people who might be eating fish or swimming in the sea or living near the plant are going to be virtually zero.
The release is part of the Fukushima plant's decommissioning and is set to go on for several decades. And for the environmentalists in Taiwan, it's the unknown risks over the long term that concern them the most.
把它稀释入海，可能短期之内对我们大家的健康没有什么太大的影响，但是长期累积，那个影响是什么？没有任何的一个研究报告告诉我们，不用担心。
Despite multiple attempts from politicians, scientists and international bodies to reassure them, these activists are determined to continue to push for the Japanese government to halt the discharge, something they say could be an irreversible mistake. Patrick Chen and Sally Jensen for TaiwanPlus.
Many already know Taiwan as a leader in chips, but the country has set a new record by hosting the largest semiconductor expo in the world. Our reporter Joyce Sung was there as industry leaders came together for SEMICON.
The largest gathering of chip companies in history in the capital of global tech hub Taiwan. The annual SEMICON Expo has begun, and many industry watchers and budding engineers are here for an inside look into the brains of all things digital.
对于现在这个行业算蛮有兴趣的，对，所以想要来看看，可以跟着人类一起进步的这种感觉，其实对我自己是蛮兴奋的。
The chips industry is incredibly complex and one that relies on the expertise of countless firms scattered across the globe. And it's not every day different ends of the supply chain come together under one roof. Several of the world's top tech leaders, from TSMC to Google and Lam Research, are here in Taipei to share their insights as to what's next for the billion-dollar chips industry.
Warm welcome to Dr. Wu.
And for many, the answer was unsurprising.
In the last 2 years, AI has been sensational as one of the examples for how industry is presenting something in the dirt of times to create demand. Now, the AI implication to the overall demand is mind-boggling.
Industry leaders say there's no need to look much further for what's next because it's already here. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is one of the strongest drivers elevating semiconductors. That's because even more advanced chips are needed to power rapidly developing AI, in particular generative AI, which can produce its own content. In turn, AI can help chip makers improve their designs and manufacturing processes, upping operational efficiency and product quality, creating a self-sustaining cycle of technological advancement.
It is extremely important in AI to make sure that we pass all the safety checks, all the safety standards, making sure we really comply to our AI principles.
But this is not without its challenges, since how to govern AI is still an open question. Industry leaders say that's why coming together to exchange ideas is important. This kind of collaboration is key to moving chips forward to unlock even more possibilities in an increasingly digital world. Chris Ma and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
The U.S. has warned North Korea over supplying Russia with weapons for use in its war against Ukraine. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is expected to travel to Russia this month to discuss arms sales, according to U.S. officials. But the Kremlin says it has nothing to say about a possible trip. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says arms negotiations between Russia and North Korea are actively moving forward.
Providing weapons to Russia for use on the battlefield to attack grain silos and the heating infrastructure of major cities as we head into winter, to try to conquer territory that belongs to another sovereign nation, this is not going to reflect well on North Korea, and they will pay a price for this in the international community.
Hong Kong's top court has told the city's government to legally recognize same-sex partnerships. The court ruled on Tuesday that not doing so puts the government in violation of the city's laws. It called for protecting things like access to hospitals and inheritance for same-sex couples, but stopped short of granting them full marriage rights. It instead urged an alternative framework for those couples. The ruling follows years of legal battles from activists in the Chinese city.
It is a significant victory which makes clear that Hong Kong law must afford due respect and protection to same-sex couples. This will help families while hurting no one. Also, it makes another important step toward equal love and more harmonious society for all.
To find out more about the ruling and what it means for Hong Kong, our reporter Rick Lauert spoke to Billy Leung, an advocate from Hong Kong, after the court ruling on Tuesday.
Can you tell us a little bit about this ruling in Hong Kong? What rights should same-sex couples there be expecting?
The ruling today is a partial yet significant victory for the LGBTQ community in Hong Kong. The ruling basically says that while it is constitutional to exclude same-sex couples from the institution of marriage, as well as to deny foreign same-sex marriage registered overseas, the court, by a majority, finds that not providing any alternative framework conferring legal recognition on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. And so there needs to be, the court does recommend that there needs to be some sort of framework to provide same-sex couples with a sense of legitimacy and to dispel any sense that they belong to an inferior class of persons. But what it means is that, the court is in favor of having some sort of civil union or partnership rights, stopping short of granting full marriage equality.
How do you think this ruling reflects attitudes towards LGBTQ people in Hong Kong? And are those attitudes changing?
I think there has been some very encouraging figures that's been published by the universities, done by Hong Kong U and CUHK, which has been, they've done a rolling studies looking at the support of same-sex partnership rights in Hong Kong. On the question on whether Hong Kong would support same-sex marriage, there's seen significant and encouraging improvements. The study that was released a few months ago in May found that 60% of Hong Kongers said they support same-sex marriage, while 23% remain neutral. And this is a drastic improvement from 38% of support in 2013.
Given the current political situation in Hong Kong and the national security law there, which curtails a lot of freedoms, a lot of free speech and protest rights, how much room is there in the city to push for greater civil rights like LGBTQ rights?
I think since the national security law has been put in place, on top of that, there has been the COVID lockdown. We have seen drastic changes to the way people express themselves, particularly in the form of public rally and demonstrations. This is also seen in events such as the Pride parades or Pink Dots or other public events. How that will affect the fight in this narrowing space remains to be seen.
That was Rick Lauert speaking to activist Billy Leung. Coming up, how eggs have become the center of Taiwan's latest political showdown. Stay tuned.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, like Thailand's capital, please follow us on social media.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Eggs have become the latest subject of dispute in Taiwan's legislature. The decision to import Brazilian eggs has sparked arguments about bird flu and accusations of political favors. John Van Trieste has more.
A batch of 80 million eggs is polarizing lawmakers. The eggs came from Brazil, where bird flu has been declared a health emergency. Members of the opposition Kuomintang, or KMT, have asked whether the government might have held off on declaring Brazil a bird flu zone as a favor to the importer.
怎么这么巧啊？5月20号，人家巴西已经爆发禽流感，你迟到6月28号你才宣布。
For its part, the company handling the supply says the eggs had already left Brazil by the time the outbreak began, and says there's no risk of contamination. One member of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party has questioned the KMT's motives for making an issue out of this shipment.
有厂商愿意有人脉可以买到蛋的情况底下，但是这是不是就是因为挡人财路？因为后来大家发现，鸡蛋大量进口之后，有些人拿出了囤积的鸡蛋。
As politicians argue, the egg shortage continues to bite. People in Taiwan consume 24 million eggs a day, but domestic production is about 1 million short to meet that demand. Old-fashioned, less efficient hen houses are one reason for the shortfall. In March, the government pledged to subsidize upgrades to more modern facilities.
以一半的方式来补助，那每场不超过450万。那如果要改建成密闭水帘式的，那我们一场是1000万。那另外，针对5万只以上的这些大型的养禽场，那我们提供的是专案农贷2年的利息补贴。
But until this takes off, egg imports, however controversial, will remain the only way the country can meet its needs. James Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi is being denied outside medical treatment while suffering poor health in prison. That's according to a source close to the matter. The 78-year-old is said to be suffering from swelling in her gums, lightheadedness, and vomiting. But Myanmar's military is reportedly only allowing prison doctors to treat her, promoting concerns about the quality of care she's receiving. Aung San Suu Kyi is facing 27 years of detention after being convicted of corruption and election fraud. She has denied all charges and is appealing them. The Myanmar junta has carried out a brutal crackdown on dissent since it took power in a coup in 2021. Governments around the world have called for Aung San Suu Kyi and other political prisoners to be released. Ukraine claims to have made steady advances against invading Russian forces in the country's southeast. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with frontline troops as his country's forces recaptured 3 square kilometers of territory near the city of Bakhmut. It's the latest in a series of bit-by-bit advances made in recent weeks. These gains indicate progress in a counteroffensive that began several months ago. Ukrainian forces are still facing several heavily mined defensive lines in the east of the country. Volunteers in Ukraine are turning war waste into furniture for people's homes. Their efforts show that even weapons can become a source of creation. Bryn Thomas has the story.
When Russia ended the peace, it created a wasteland. Since Moscow invaded Ukraine in early 2022, the country has suffered an estimated 25,000 civilian casualties. 4 million people have been displaced, and as cities burn, thousands of homes have been destroyed. The country is left strewn with war detritus. Unexploded bombs, shell casings, and burned-out tanks lie in places that were once fields, playgrounds, and theaters. But a project in the country is showing that creation can grow from the tools of destruction.
Навпаки, це речі відстріляні, це харизматичні речі, це раритетні речі, які є символом мужності, символом і залишаться символом цієї історії війни, Великої війни 22-23 року.
Natalia Kuzma's project uses shell casings to make table legs and ammo boxes to make chests. She and other volunteers make furniture from the waste of war. The proceeds from their sale are donated to the country's war effort.
Є частина волонтерська, тому ми виручені кошти направлятимемо військовим, а друга частина – це екологічна, тому що від початку війни близько 50-60 тисяч гільз відстріляних залишається на наших українських полях, і ми одні з тих, хто показує, як ці речі можна перетворювати в щось корисне і прикладне.
Home goods, made on the home front. Even the name, GIT Be Brave, reflects the struggle. GIT was the call sign for the project's founder, an IT worker. Like so many men and women in Ukraine, he was forced to exchange a normal life to fight in defense of his country. His resilience is seen in this sturdy furniture.
Це столик з гартованим склом, тут дуже якісні матеріали, фарба екологічна. Ми зберегли автентичні написи, які були на цих вінтажних ящиках. Кожен наш виріб позначений тим, що це проект, гід.
Even weapons are being converted for peaceful purposes. For example, a rifle's bolt.
Ми, наприклад, придумали ручку, яка буде змонтована ось тут, за яку береш і зручно буде відчиняти цей ящик.
Russia's war in Ukraine destroyed or damaged 140,000 residential buildings and about 115,000 private residents in the first 6 months of the conflict. Among the devastation were innumerable items of furniture, something that's having an impact on interior design in the country.
З нашим часом, я думаю, це буде стиль loft military досить таким популярним ще довгим часом. Всі друзі, всі родичі, всі там. Це все буде триматися в головах наших ще дуже довго, на жаль.
But the artisans here don't necessarily want their customers to feel like they're bringing the war home. That's why they're beautifying the objects and making every one unique.
Те, що ми хотіли вкласти, це те, що ці квіти, вони не просто так тут знаходяться. Вони виринають крізь війну, вони намагаються пробитися, вони, подібно до підсніжників, виринають і так.
Whether growing in a bomb site or placed upon the graves of the dead, flowers have become emblematic of the conflict in Ukraine. But the flowers on these items of furniture show that from the ashes of destruction comes the beauty of creation. Chris Ma and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Countries are pledging to buy up carbon credits at Africa's first ever climate summit. Host country Kenya's President William Ruto says charging carbon emitters is the best way to fuel the continent's growth.
To be able to unlock the resources that we need to be able to drive these new investment and financing opportunities, especially for green energy. We believe it is time to have a conversation about carbon tax.
Leaders from around the world were at the summit in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. They pledged hundreds of millions of US dollars towards sustainable development projects. But some participants say unfair debt burdens in African countries must be addressed. African economies are amongst the hardest hit by climate change, despite the continent emitting the lowest amount of carbon. What if you could help the environment just by going outside for a walk? A shoe designer in the UK hopes to have made this possible with a pair of specially designed sneakers. Our reporter Charlie Storer has the details.
A stroll through nature is a relaxing leisure activity, but industrial design graduate Kiki Grammatopoulos may have found a way to make it a win-win for both humans and nature. If you look at Kiki's shoes, you'll notice they have an unusual design. They're bulky, with a 3D printed outsole covered in tiny hooks. These sneakers were made with the purpose of catching and spreading plant seeds as the wearer walks or runs, much like the role that animals play in dispersing wild plants.
I designed an outsole for a running trainer, a trail shoe actually, and the idea was to somewhat mimic what animals do with rewilding, so one of those being epizookery. And I took the idea of Velcro, which is also a form of biomimicry, and I blew it up into kind of a 3D texture around the outsole.
Kiki's shoes were designed as part of the Rewild the Run project, which aims to spread plant seeds throughout urban areas. When coming up with the idea, Kiki looked at ways animals in the wild help to regenerate the surrounding biodiversity.
When it comes to rewilding in the wild, a keystone species such as a bison would disperse seeds through their fur and their hooves. So I'm using those details to try and replicate that in footwear and in the outsole. So if you were to run within the urban environment, you could basically mimic what a keystone species would do.
Kiki is now working with a London-based running club to test rewilding patches as an accessory on other types of shoes. She hopes, with the help of runners, her design can raise awareness of and help combat loss of biodiversity in towns and cities.
We're going to have 2 out of 3 people are going to live in an urban environment by 2050. So the depletion of biodiversity is so concerning, especially for not just wildlife, but also for human life and for our mental health. And there's so many positives to having our biodiversity. So I think, yeah.
Kiki is looking to build on her shoe design with the help of other rewilding experts and hopes that by doing so, it'll help bring a bit of nature back into the city. Scott Huang, Sandy Chi and Charlie Storer for TaiwanPlus.
NBA star Michael Porter Jr. has arrived in Taiwan for a 4-day tour. Dozens of fans gathered at Taoyuan International Airport early in the morning to welcome the Denver Nuggets player. This is Porter's first time here, but he hasn't come to play his sport. Instead, he's been invited to throw the ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game in Taichung. At the airport, Porter says he's excited to know more about Taiwan and meet his fans.
I want to try the food, the beach. I heard the beach is awesome. Just interact with the fans and just see everybody.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, we leave you with images of a small black goat surfing waves in California. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.